Every culture imagines death as both a mystery and a certainty. In Hinduism and Buddhism, that mystery takes form in Yama, the Lord of Death, the ruler of justice, and the arbiter of karmic retribution. Yama is not simply the grim figure who ends life. He is also the divine judge who weighs every action, the teacher who reveals the secrets of the self, and the guardian of Naraka, the underworld where sins are repaid and punishments as vivid as they are terrifying. Some traditions remember him as a stern but fair guide, others as a merciless enforcer of law. But across all stories, one truth remains: no living being escapes Yama. Yama is not simply a symbol of fear. He embodies the moral architecture of the universe. Across centuries, poets, philosophers, and sages have depicted him as the ultimate measure of human action. In every soul he encounters, Yama sees both potential and transgression. His role is not to delight in punishment, but to maintain balance, to ensure that each life, however fleeting, carries consequences that reflect its choices. His presence forces reflection. Mortality, Yama teaches, is a lens through which the ethical weight of existence is revealed. Every deed, every lie, every act of devotion is recorded and accounted for. In this way, Yama's mythology does more than explain death. It offers a framework for living with awareness, responsibility, and intentionality. The terror of Naraka, vivid as it is, exists not to provoke despair, but to impress upon humans the seriousness of moral conduct. The earliest origins of Yama appear in the Rigveda. He is described as the son of the sun god Vivasvat and Saranyu, and the very first mortal to die. By crossing the threshold of mortality, he discovered the path to the afterlife and became its ruler. From this role, he gained the title Dharmaraja, the king of righteousness, because he does not act arbitrarily. Yama's role is to weigh every soul according to its deeds, rewarding the virtuous and punishing the sinful. But Yama is not always the figure of terror. In the Katha Upanishad, one of the most profound encounters with him unfolds. A young boy named Nachiketa is sent to Yama's abode by his father. He waits at Yama's gate for 3 days without food or rest. When Yama finally appears, he offers the boy 3 boons. Nachiketa asks first for reconciliation with his father, then mastery over sacred rituals, and finally, the most dangerous request of all, knowledge of what lies beyond death. Yama resists at first, trying to dissuade him with promises of wealth, long life, and worldly pleasures. But Nachiketa persists. At last, Yama yields, revealing the highest truths: the immortality of the Atman, the nature of the self beyond death, and the path to liberation. In this story, Yama is not executioner but teacher, reluctant, stern, but ultimately illuminating the way to freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Not every story softens Yama. In the tale of Markandeya, his terrifying aspect takes center stage. Markandeya was destined to die at the age of 16, but his devotion to Shiva was absolute. When Yama's messengers came to seize him, they failed. At last, Yama himself cast his noose upon the boy, but Shiva intervened, striking Yama down and saving Markandeya. Though Brahma later restored Yama to his post, the story reveals something profound. Even death itself can be halted, if only for a moment, by divine grace and the power of devotion. Yet Yama is also a figure of ethical pedagogy. In tales like Markandeya's, we see the tension between divine law and human devotion, illustrating that absolute power is not unchallenged. The stories of intervention, whether by Shiva, Savitri, or the subtle tests of Dharma, remind us that moral courage, devotion, and wisdom can influence even the inexorable processes of life and death. Yama's authority is firm, but it is never arbitrary. It is measured, deliberate, and deeply intertwined with justice. Across Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, Yama's narratives consistently intertwine fear with instruction. In the Hindu Puranas, Naraka's vivid punishments reinforce ethical lessons. In Buddhism, Yama as Shinje Chogyal is a mirror for self-reflection, emphasizing the unflinching clarity of karma. Across both systems, he embodies the principle that life is not merely lived for pleasure or survival, but as a deliberate engagement with moral and spiritual responsibility, a reminder that death, far from being an end, is the ultimate arbiter of our choices. Another tale appears in the Mahabharata as the Yaksha Prashna. During their exile, the Pandavas discover a lake guarded by an unseen voice. When Yudhishthira's brothers drink from it without answering its riddles, they fall dead. Yudhishthira, patient and wise, responds to the riddles with composure and truth. At last, the voice reveals itself. It is Yama in disguise. Pleased with Yudhishthira's devotion to Dharma, he restores the brothers to life. Once again, Yama emerges not simply as punisher, but as examiner, rewarding wisdom and restraint. Yama's court is not a solitary throne. Puranic traditions describe an entire apparatus of justice. Chitragupta, created by Brahma, serves as celestial scribe, recording every action of every living being in an infallible ledger. The Yamadutas, grim messengers, enforce Yama's decrees, dragging sinners from the mortal world to Naraka. Here, punishments mirror the sins themselves. The liar and the deceiver are thrown into Raurava, where serpents born from betrayed victims bite without end. The neglector of duty wanders Asipatravana, a forest of sword-leaved trees that slice flesh at every step. The violent are cast into cauldrons of boiling oil, stripped of flesh again and again, only to be restored so their punishment may continue until their karma is spent. Thieves are hurled into Shukara, where wild boars tear them apart endlessly. These torments are vivid and horrifying, yet they are not eternal. Naraka is not a place of damnation without end, but a realm of karmic repayment, where debts are settled and souls once purified may rise again. Buddhism reimagines Yama in a different light. Here he is not ruler but impartial administrator. The law of karma itself decides a soul's fate. Upon death, beings are brought before the mirror of karma, which reflects their deeds with merciless clarity. Yama does not judge. He only ensures that the karmic order is fulfilled. Buddhist cosmology describes 18 Narakas, divided into hot and cold hells. In the hot hells, killers are torn apart and reconstituted, only to die again. In Avachi, the lowest hell, the gravest sinners are annihilated in fire and restored without pause, until their karma is spent. In the cold hells, the condemned are frozen until their very bodies shatter like glass, only to reform again. Tibetan traditions intensify this imagery further. Yama becomes Shinje Chogyal, the Lord of Death, a buffalo-headed giant wreathed in flames, clutching the wheel of life. His fearsome form reminds practitioners of the urgency of liberation before the cycle of rebirth drags them back into suffering. And yet, there are tales where Yama can be moved. In the Mahabharata, the story of Savitri and Satyavan unfolds. When Satyavan dies suddenly, Yama comes to claim him. But Savitri follows, refusing to be parted from her husband. With every step, she pleads with reason and devotion. At first, Yama is unmoved, but her persistence and selfless love soften him. At last, he grants her boons, including the return of Satyavan's life. This story emphasizes that Yama's justice, though stern, can be tempered by devotion, wisdom, and fidelity. So who is Yama? He is at once the inevitable end and the guardian of cosmic balance. He is a punisher and teacher, executioner and philosopher. To Nachiketa, he revealed the immortality of the soul. To Yudhishthira, he tested Dharma. To Savitri, he granted mercy. To sinners, he delivers punishment. To all, he stands as the reminder that our actions never vanish. They follow us beyond the grave. The myths of Yama are not simply meant to terrify. They are meant to awaken. They teach that life is fragile, that death is inevitable, and that our conduct, our choices, and our devotion shape the journey beyond. In both Hindu and Buddhist traditions, Yama is not only the Lord of Death, but the mirror of truth, reflecting to each soul what it has become, and guiding it toward what it must yet learn. When we contemplate Yama, we confront not just the fear of dying, but the challenge of living rightly. For in his realm, there is no escape, no disguise, no excuse. Only the truth of what we have done remains. And so, whether as Dharma Raja, Shinja, or the inescapable guide into Naraka, Yama waits at the end of every path. To fear him is natural, but to understand him is to realize that death, like Yama, is not the enemy, only the reminder that our deeds endure beyond the body, and that liberation is possible through wisdom, devotion, and the courage to live by Dharma. If you found Yama's story as fascinating as I did, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into myths and legends from around the world. Share your thoughts below. What story of Yama struck you the most?